Have you ever bought something and immediately felt like you got scammed? Not because it was bad, not because it didn't work, but because the price felt completely ridiculous for what you actually got. And the truth is, a lot of the things we buy every day are wildly overpriced. Sometimes it's because of branding, sometimes it's because of convenience, and sometimes it's because companies know they can charge more, simply because people will still pay. So today, we're looking at 20 things that are overpriced and why they cost so much in the first place. Some of these might make total sense once you hear the reason, and some of them will probably just make you angry. Let's get into it. 20. Bottled water. Bottled water might be one of the most obvious overpriced products on Earth. In many cases, you're paying for water that's been filtered, packaged in plastic, and branded to look premium. And yes, sometimes bottled water comes from springs or specially processed sources. But a lot of it is still just ordinary drinking water sold at a huge markup. So why is it overpriced? Because you're not really paying for the water. You're paying for convenience, packaging, transport, refrigeration, and branding. If you're thirsty and you're already out somewhere, a bottle of water suddenly becomes way more valuable than it would be at home, and companies know that. That's why a case of bottled water can feel cheap at a grocery store, but a single bottle at an airport, concert, or gas station can feel borderline offensive. 19. Movie theater popcorn. Movie theater popcorn is legendary for being overpriced. And weirdly enough, there's actually a reason for it. Movie theaters often don't make as much money from tickets as people assume. A big chunk of ticket revenue goes back to film studios, especially for major releases. That means theaters rely heavily on concessions to stay profitable. And popcorn is the king of all concession profits. The ingredients are cheap. The smell is irresistible. And once you're already sitting there for 2 hours, suddenly paying way too much for popcorn starts to feel normal. So yes, it's overpriced, but it's overpriced because it's not really just a snack. It's part of the business model. 18. Printer ink. Printer ink has been called one of the most overpriced liquids consumers regularly buy. And honestly, that reputation is deserved. A lot of printers are sold pretty cheaply, sometimes suspiciously cheaply. And that's because the real money often comes later, from the ink. This is a classic razor and blades business model. Sell the machine for a low price, then make your profit on the refill. And because many printers are designed to work best, or only with certain cartridges, customers get locked into buying expensive replacements. That's why people joke that it can feel cheaper to buy a whole new printer than replace the ink, because sometimes it almost is. 17. Airport food. Airport food feels like it exists in its own economy. A basic sandwich can cost as much as a full meal somewhere else. A bottle of juice suddenly feels like a luxury item. And somehow, even the snacks look expensive. Why? Because airports are a captive market. Once you're through security, your options are limited, you're tired, rushed, and probably not in the mood to comparison shop. Businesses inside airports also often deal with high rent, staffing costs, and logistical challenges. But let's be honest, a lot of the pricing also comes down to one simple fact. They know you don't have many alternatives. And if your flight boards in 20 minutes, you're probably paying whatever they ask. 16. College textbooks. Textbooks have been draining student wallets for years. And one of the most frustrating parts is that many of them are outrageously expensive for books that often get used for only a few months. So why are they overpriced? Part of it comes from a strange market problem. The student usually isn't the one choosing the book. The professor is. That means the actual buyer often has very little control over the purchase. And publishers have taken advantage of that for decades by releasing new editions, bundling access codes, and making older versions harder to use. So even if the content hasn't changed much, The price often has, and somehow, the updated edition always seems to cost more. 15. Wedding flowers. Flowers are already expensive. But once you put the word wedding in front of them, the price can start doing backflips. And no, florists aren't always just trying to scam people. Weddings require a lot more than simply handing over a bouquet. There's timing, design, transport, setup, freshness, backup planning, and a lot of pressure to get everything perfect. That said, the wedding industry absolutely knows people are emotionally invested. And when something is tied to the most important day of your life, people become much less price sensitive. So yes, wedding flowers cost more partly because they involve more work, but also because wedding pricing is very, very real. 14. Eyeglass frames. Eyeglass frames can get absurdly expensive. And if you've ever looked at a pair and thought, how is this tiny piece of plastic and metal hundreds of dollars? You're not alone. Now, to be fair, some frames are made with better materials, better hinges, and better durability. But a huge part of the price often comes down to branding, licensing, and fashion positioning. Because glasses aren't just medical devices anymore, they're also accessories. Which means companies can price them more like jewelry or designer fashion than like a basic necessity. And once you need them to literally see, that pricing power gets even stronger. 13. Name brand cosmetics. Cosmetics can be one of the biggest examples of paying for the name. Because while some premium beauty products really do use better ingredients or more refined formulas, a lot of the price is tied to packaging, marketing, celebrity endorsements, and prestige branding. That fancy glass bottle, the luxury campaign, the clean, radiant, clinically inspired label. You're paying for all of it. And that doesn't automatically mean the product is bad. It just means the actual cost of making it is often nowhere near the shelf price. Sometimes the makeup is premium, and sometimes it's just premium looking. 12. Phone chargers and cables. You'd think something as simple as a charging cable wouldn't be a financial event. But somehow, these things are always more expensive than they feel like they should be. Part of the reason is that accessories live in a weird pricing zone where convenience wins every time. Lose your charger. Need one right now. Buying it at the airport, gas station, electronics store, or checkout counter? That's exactly when prices magically get worse. And branded accessories often cost more because they promise better durability, faster charging, or device compatibility. Sometimes that's true. But sometimes you're just paying a lot for a cable that will still mysteriously stop working in 3 months. 11. Greeting cards. Greeting cards are tiny pieces of folded paper with a message someone else wrote for you. And somehow they can cost as much as lunch. So why are they so overpriced? Because they're emotional purchases. You're not buying cardboard, you're buying a moment. A birthday, a sympathy message, an anniversary, a holiday. And because these are low frequency, emotionally important purchases, most people don't stop and calculate whether the card is worth it. They just buy it. Which is exactly why companies can charge so much for something you'll probably read once, and then put in a drawer. 10. Designer jeans. There are jeans. And then there are jeans that cost enough to make you reconsider your entire personality. Now yes, some expensive jeans do use better denim, better stitching, and better construction. But after a certain point, a lot of what you're paying for is brand image, status, and identity. The feeling that these jeans say something about you. And that's the thing about fashion. The price often has less to do with the fabric, and more to do with what the label means. So when you see jeans priced at several $100s, you're often not paying for pants. You're paying for positioning. 9. Hotel minibar snacks. Nothing in human history has made people question their life choices faster than opening a hotel minibar. A tiny chocolate bar. $7. A small bottle of water. Also $7. A handful of nuts. Basically a microloan. Why is it so expensive? Because mini bars are built around one thing: impulse buying when you're trapped and tired. Hotels know that by the time someone reaches for mini bar snacks, they're usually not in bargain hunting mode. They're hungry, lazy, jet-lagged, or all three, so the prices are less about value and more about convenience under perfect conditions for bad decisions. 8. Diamonds. Diamonds are probably one of the most famous overpriced products in modern history. Not because they're worthless, but because their price is heavily tied to marketing, perception, and tradition. For generations, diamonds have been sold as symbols of love, commitment, luxury, and permanence. And once a product becomes emotionally symbolic, its price can become disconnected from what it would cost in a more ordinary market. That's why the diamond industry has historically been such a powerful example of how branding can shape what people think something is. Supposed to cost. You're not just buying a stone, you're buying a story, and stories can get expensive. 7. New cars in the first year. A brand new car can lose a painful amount of value the moment it stops being brand new. And that's why some people call new cars overpriced, not because they're bad, but because of how quickly they depreciate. Part of what you're paying for is that untouched, perfect first owner experience. The latest model, the warranty, the smell, the clean history, but financially, that premium can be brutal. Because the second a car becomes used, even if it's practically identical, the market often values it very differently. Which means in many cases, the most expensive part of buying a new car is just being the first person to sit in it. 6. Funeral caskets. This one is less funny and more uncomfortable. Funeral costs can be shockingly high, and caskets are often one of the biggest examples. Part of that comes from materials, craftsmanship, and specialized services. But another huge part comes from timing. Families are making emotional decisions during grief, stress, and urgency. And when people are in that state, they're far less likely to comparison shop or negotiate. That creates a situation where prices can become much higher than people would ever tolerate in a normal buying environment. And that's part of what makes funeral products one of the hardest examples of overpriced spending, because the people paying are often in the worst position to push back. 5. Coffee shop drinks. Buying coffee out every now and then isn't the problem. But when you really think about what some coffee drinks cost, it gets kind of wild. Especially when milk, espresso, syrup, ice, and whipped topping somehow combine into a $7 experience. So why is it overpriced? Because you're not just buying coffee, you're buying convenience, atmosphere, labor, location, speed, and routine. For a lot of people, that coffee run is part of the day. It's not just a drink, it's a ritual, and rituals are easy to charge extra for. That's why coffee at home feels cheap. But coffee handed to you with your name misspelled on the cup suddenly feels premium. For baby products. Some baby products are genuinely useful. And some feel like they were invented by a marketing team in a mild panic. New parents are one of the easiest groups in the world to sell to, because they're trying to do everything right. And when a product promises to make life safer, easier, cleaner, smarter, softer, or more developmentally beneficial, people pay fast. That's why certain baby items, wipe warmers, specialized containers, fancy monitors, designer diaper bags, oddly specific feeding gadgets, can cost way more than they logically should. Because once something is connected to your baby, overpriced can start to sound like responsible. And companies absolutely know that. 3. Mattresses. Mattress shopping might be one of the most confusing buying experiences on the planet. Everything sounds important. Everything sounds premium. Everything sounds orthopedic, cooling, or pressure relieving. And somehow every mattress is both life-changing and on sale for today only. Mattresses are overpriced partly because the industry has historically thrived on confusing comparisons and inflated list prices. Many brands use slightly different names and model variations across stores, making it harder to compare the exact same product. that gives sellers more pricing power. And because a mattress is something you use every night, people are more willing to justify spending more, which is fair. But the pricing often gets stretched way beyond what most people would expect from what is, at the end of the day, a rectangle you sleep on. To fast food delivery. Fast food used to be the cheap option. Now, if you order it through an app, it can somehow become a luxury purchase. A meal that costs one amount in-store can suddenly cost way more once you add delivery fees, service fees, possible small order fees, tips, and sometimes even menu prices that are higher in the app to begin with. So why is it overpriced? Because delivery isn't just food anymore. It's a convenience platform. You're paying to avoid driving, waiting, cooking, and leaving your house. And when convenience stacks with laziness and hunger, prices can get out of hand very quickly. Which is how a quick cheap dinner somehow ends up costing enough to make you stare at your receipt in silence. One convenience store, anything. And at number 1, honestly, almost anything from a convenience store. Not because convenience stores are evil, but because they are built around one powerful concept. You need it now, that's it. That's the whole business. You're paying more because it's nearby, fast, open late, and requires almost no effort. Need batteries, cold drink, pain reliever, phone charger, snack, toothpaste? They've got it, and they know you probably don't feel like going somewhere cheaper. So convenience stores don't usually win on value. They win on urgency, and urgency is expensive. So in the end, a lot of overpriced products aren't really overpriced by accident. They're expensive because they take advantage of one of a few things: convenience, emotion, branding, urgency, or lack of alternatives. And once you start noticing that, you can't unsee it. The weird part is, some of these things are still worth buying, just maybe. Not all the time. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.